I never thought the man who married my daughter would be the one to humiliate me in front of my own community. But that's exactly what happened. He looked me in the eye, called me Dad, smiled at me like family, and then drained me dry to feed his hunger for luxury cars and flashy toys. I was nothing but a stepping stone for him. My savings, my farm, my hard-earned money, all of it became fuel for his pride. And my daughter, blinded by love, defended him every step of the way. While I worked my hands raw, he cruised through town in brand-new cars, honking his horn like a king. And people whispered, "There goes John's son-in-law in a Mercedes," while poor John still drives that rusty pickup. But I'm not the kind of man you can humiliate and walk away from. He thought he was clever, thought he was winning. What he didn't realize was that I was watching, waiting, and preparing. When the time came, I took back every ounce of pride he stole from me, and I left him crawling in the dirt he once thought he was too good for. Before I begin, please subscribe to the channel and tell us in the comments where in the world you're listening from. Now let me take you back. Before the cars, before the betrayal, before the man my daughter married showed his true colors, let me tell you how my son-in-law used me and how I destroyed his pride. I grew up a simple man, working the soil my father left behind. Our farm wasn't the biggest, but it was honest work. I woke before sunrise, plowed fields, raised livestock, and earned every dollar with sweat dripping down my back. Over the years, I built more than just a farm. I built a name in this town. Folks knew me as John Miller, a man who kept his word and paid his debts. I wasn't rich, but I was respected, and that respect was worth more than gold to me. My pride wasn't in the land, though. It was in my children, especially my daughter Emily. She was the light of my life, gentle, kind, and always smiling. When she graduated nursing school, I couldn't have been prouder. I thought she'd build a good life, one with a husband who would treat her right. Then she met Ryan. He was the kind of man who turned heads everywhere he went. Polished shoes, slicked back hair, that big city charm that makes small-town girls swoon. He knew how to talk, how to smile, how to make promises sound like poetry. Emily fell for him fast, and before I could blink, they were standing in a church, exchanging vows. I'll admit it, I had doubts. Something about Ryan's smile felt too sharp, too practiced, but my daughter was happy, and what father doesn't want to see his child happy? So I swallowed my misgivings, shook his hand, and called him son. In the beginning, Ryan played the part well. He came by the farm, offered to help with chores, even called me Dad with that slick grin of his. But I noticed the way his eyes lingered, not on the soil, not on the livestock, not on the home I built, but on my truck, my tools, my wallet. He liked shiny things, expensive things. He talked about cars the way some men talk about women, with a hunger in his voice. Emily laughed it off. "It's just a hobby, Dad," she'd say. "Ryan's always been into cars." But I knew better. A hobby doesn't drain a man's savings. A hobby doesn't leave a father humiliated in front of his neighbors. No, this wasn't a hobby. This was greed, dressed up in a fancy suit. And sooner or later, it was going to show its true face. The mask began to slip not long after Emily and Ryan settled into their marriage. At first, it was little things. Ryan would show up to Sunday dinners, wearing a new watch or a different pair of sunglasses. He'd talk endlessly about horsepower, engines, and foreign brands most folks in our town had never even heard of. One evening, he pulled up to my house in a rented sports car, bright red, the kind you could hear before you saw. He stepped out, running his hand across the hood like it was some kind of trophy. "What do you think, Dad?" he asked me, flashing that slick grin. "A car like this doesn't just get you from point A to point B. It tells the world who you are." I raised an eyebrow. "And who exactly are you trying to tell the world you are, Ryan?" He laughed, brushing off the question, but the answer was clear enough. He wanted to be seen, admired, envied, and he didn't care what it cost, or who paid for it. Emily tried to defend him. "Dad, it's just cars. That's his thing. Some men like fishing, some like golf. Ryan likes cars." But this was more than liking cars. This was an obsession. At family gatherings, he'd corner me in the kitchen. "You know, Dad, a man's reputation is tied to his ride. A truck like yours says you're stuck in the past. But a Lexus? A BMW? That tells people you're moving forward." I'd smile politely and change the subject. But inside, something twisted. I had worked my whole life to build a name people respected. I didn't need chrome rims or leather seats to prove my worth. The real trouble started when Ryan began talking about opportunities. He'd lean across the table and lower his voice, like we were partners in some grand scheme. "Dad, think about it. If we pool some money, I can get a dealership license. We flip cars, make big profits. It's a smart investment. An investment, that's what he called it. But every word out of his mouth sounded less like a plan for the future and more like a scheme to bleed me dry. I wanted to believe he loved Emily. I wanted to believe he cared about family. But I couldn't shake the feeling that the only thing he truly loved was the gleam of a polished hood and the sound of an engine revving beneath him. And little by little, that hunger was about to sink its teeth into me. The first time Ryan asked me for money, he dressed it up like it was nothing more than a favor between family. He came by one afternoon, all smiles, holding a six-pack like we were old buddies. We sat on the porch, the Kansas sun beating down, and after a few minutes of small talk, he leaned forward. "Dad," he began, using that word like it gave him rights to my pockets, "I've got a great opportunity. There's this dealer up in Wichita letting go of a used Mercedes at a steal. If I can grab it now, I can flip it for twice the price. All I need is a short loan. You'll have it back in a month, I promise." I frowned. "Ryan, that sounds more like gambling than investing." He laughed, brushing it off. "Come on, Dad. You've got money sitting in the bank, land worth a fortune. What's the harm in helping out your family?" Family. That word stung. Against my better judgment, I gave him the money, not because I believed him, but because I didn't want to start a war with Emily. She looked at me with those hopeful eyes, and I couldn't bear to disappoint her. A month passed. No repayment. When I asked about it, Ryan waved me off. "It's tied up in another deal. You'll get it soon, I swear." Then came the second request. Bigger. This time he wanted enough to buy a shiny BMW. "Dad, this one's different," he insisted. "It'll put us on the map. People respect success, and this car will open doors." I shook my head. "You want respect, Ryan? Earn it. A car doesn't make the man." But he didn't listen. He never listened. He went straight to Emily, whispered in her ear until she was pleading with me too. "Dad, please. He's trying so hard. Don't you want us to have a better life?" So again, I gave in. And again, the money vanished into chrome wheels and leather seats. It wasn't long before the whispers started in town. People pointing, snickering, saying, "John's son-in-law drives a car worth more than his farm truck," and every time I heard it, my chest burned with shame. Ryan wasn't just draining my savings. He was draining my pride. The day I realized the truth about Ryan, it hit me harder than any storm I'd weathered on the farm. I was at the hardware store, picking up nails and lumber, when I overheard two men talking by the counter. "Did you see that car Ryan Miller's driving now? A brand new Mercedes. He must be doing pretty well." The other man chuckled. "Doing well? Everyone knows where the money comes from. Old John's the one footing the bill." They laughed, and my stomach turned. My name, my reputation, dragged into the dirt by my own son-in-law. That evening, I went straight to Emily's house. She opened the door, her smile fading when she saw the look on my face. "Dad, what's wrong?" "Where's Ryan?" I asked. He came swaggering out of the living room, keys jingling in his hand, his shirt unbuttoned at the collar like he thought he was some Wall Street tycoon. "What's the matter, Dad?" he asked casually. "Don't like the new ride?" I clenched my fists. "You're using me, Ryan. Every dollar you've touched has gone into your toys. You promised me investments, but all you've done is humiliate me in front of this town." Emily jumped in before he could answer. "Dad, it's not like that. Ryan's building something for us. You just don't see the big picture." "The big picture?" I snapped. "The big picture is my neighbors laughing at me while my son-in-law parades around in cars he didn't earn." Ryan smirked, the kind of smirk that makes a man want to break his jaw. "Maybe they're laughing because you still drive that rusty old pickup. Times have changed, Dad. Respect comes with success, and success comes with the right image. You'll never understand that." Those words cut deep. For decades, I'd built my respect with hard work and honesty, and this boy, this parasite, was telling me it meant nothing without a shiny car? I walked out that night, my heart heavier than it had been in years. For days after, I couldn't step outside without hearing whispers. Folks at the diner nudged each other when I walked in. At church, people glanced at me, then at Ryan pulling up in his polished BMW. Even old friends avoided my eyes, as if I'd been reduced to a fool too blind to see what was happening under his own roof. That was the moment the shame turned into fire. Ryan thought I was weak. He thought I'd keep bending, keep paying, keep swallowing the humiliation. But he didn't know the man I truly was. And I swore then and there I'd make him choke on every ounce of pride he'd stolen from me. It didn't take long after that night for Ryan to push things too far. I could feel it coming, like a storm building on the horizon. His arrogance grew with every car he bought, every time someone in town looked at him with envy. And the more his pride swelled, the more mine was crushed beneath it. One Saturday, I drove my old pickup into town to buy feed. When I pulled into the diner parking lot, Ryan's brand new BMW was sitting out front, shining like a trophy. He was inside, holding court at a booth with a few of his buddies. They were laughing, talking loud, and every so often Ryan jingled his keys and pointed out the window toward his car. When I bulked in, the laughter died for a second. Ryan grinned, leaned back, and said just loud enough for everyone to hear, "There's my father-in-law, the man who still thinks rust and sweat are worth more than success." His friends laughed again, and I felt the heat rise in my face. I walked over, planted my hands on the table, and looked him dead in the eye. "You should be careful, Ryan. Pride has a way of making a man fall harder than he can stand." He smirked, unbothered. "With respect, Dad, the only thing making you fall is that old truck you drive. Maybe if you'd thought bigger, you wouldn't be the one everyone pities." The diner went quiet. I could feel every eye on me, waiting to see if I'd explode. But I didn't. I simply straightened up, gave him one last long look, and walked out. That night, Emily called me. Her voice was trembling. "Dad, Ryan didn't mean it. He has big dreams. He thinks you don't support him." "Dreams?" I asked. "Emily, dreams don't come at the expense of respect, and your husband has no respect for anyone, not even you." She was silent. I could hear her crying softly on the other end, torn between the man she loved and the father who raised her. When I hung up, I sat in my chair for hours, staring into the dark. That was the moment I knew enough was enough. Ryan had taken my money, my reputation, and my pride, but he had underestimated one thing: a father's will. If he thought I would go quietly, he was about to learn the hardest lesson of his life. After that night at the diner, I didn't sleep much. I lay awake, the sound of Ryan's mocking voice echoing in my ears. He thought he had me pegged as a tired old man with nothing left but a rusty truck and some worn-out land. He thought I was his personal bank, someone too weak to stand up. But Ryan didn't know me, not really. The next morning, I drove into town, not to buy feed or lumber, but to see my lawyer, David Miller. He'd been a friend for years, a man I once helped through a rough patch, and I knew I could trust him. When I told him what Ryan had been doing, David's jaw tightened. "John, you've given that boy too much rope. Time to let him hang himself with it." I leaned forward. "I don't just want to stop him. I want to strip him of the pride he stole from me. I want him to feel what it's like to crawl." David nodded slowly. "Then you'll need to make a clean sweep. Sell it all. Land, equipment, every asset he thinks he'll inherit one day. If everything turns to cash, there's nothing for him to leech off." At first, the idea cut deep. This land had been in my family for generations. My father's sweat was in that soil, just like mine. The thought of letting it go felt like cutting out a piece of my heart. But then I pictured Ryan grinning as he revved another car engine, bragging at my expense. That image hardened me, so I agreed. David and I spent the next few weeks quietly drawing up plans. Every acre, every tractor, every tool, it would all be liquidated. The sale would be public, so the whole town would see, and I made sure Ryan was kept completely in the dark. Meanwhile, I played the part of the weary old man. I let Ryan believe his insults had broken me. I let Emily think I was stepping aside out of love, and while they carried on with their flashy lifestyle, I was sharpening the knife behind my back. It wasn't about the money anymore. It was about pride. Mine, and the pride I was going to take from him. And when the hammer fell at the auction, Ryan would realize the truth. Everything he thought was his future had already slipped through his greedy fingers. The day of the auction dawned clear and hot, the kind of Kansas morning where the air already hums with cicadas before noon. Trucks and trailers began rolling into my yard, neighbors and strangers alike coming to see what old John Miller was selling. Word had spread fast. John's farm, the land, the equipment, everything was going on the block. I stood on the porch, cane in hand, looking calm. Inside, my chest ached, but not from regret. This was my choice, my move, and it was the only way to cut Ryan off at the knees. He showed up halfway through the morning, strutting across the gravel in his pressed shirt and sunglasses, Emily trailing behind him. His grin stretched wide when he saw the crowd. "Well, Dad," he said loudly, so everyone could hear, "finally making room for the next generation, huh?" I didn't answer. I just let him believe what he wanted. The auctioneer's voice rang out, fast and sharp, as tractors, plows, and equipment sold piece by piece. The crowd grew louder with each sale, neighbors bidding, outsiders raising the stakes. My land, too, every acre, went under the hammer. It was like watching a lifetime of work disappear in hours. And yet, with every slam of the gavel, I felt lighter. Ryan clapped me on the back at one point. "Smart move, Dad. Convert it all to cash. We'll put it to better use. Trust me." He winked, already counting my money as his. Emily smiled nervously, clearly torn, but she didn't say a word. By late afternoon, it was done. The house, the barns, the fields, all gone. Sold legally and cleanly. The money transferred directly into accounts only I controlled. Ryan didn't realize it yet, but the well he'd been drinking from was dry. As the crowd began to leave, I heard neighbors whispering, some shaking their heads, others saying, "Smart old man. Better to sell it himself than let greedy hands snatch it later." Ryan, meanwhile, strutted like he'd just inherited the kingdom. He had no idea that kingdom no longer existed. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with David, signing the last of the documents. He looked at me and smiled. "John, you just pulled the rug out from under him. Now, all that's left is to wait for the fall." And fall, Ryan would, harder than he ever imagined. Ryan's downfall didn't happen overnight. At first, he strutted around town as if nothing had changed. He still revved his BMW outside the diner, still wore his flashy watch's style. Al bragged to anyone who would listen about the big deals he had coming up. But without my money propping him up, the cracks began to show fast. The first car payment notice came due, and he brushed it off, saying he'd cover it with the next flip. Then came the insurance bills, the maintenance costs, the registration fees. One by one, they stacked up like bricks on his shoulders. Within 2 months, the repo men came for the Mercedes. I'll never forget the sight of that shiny car being towed right out of his driveway while the neighbors watched. Ryan tried to laugh it off, telling everyone it was just a trade-in, but the truth was clear. He couldn't keep up. Emily called me one night, her voice tight. "Dad, things are hard right now. Ryan's trying, but money is tight. Could you maybe help, just until he gets back on his feet?" I closed my eyes, the memory of every dollar I'd lost to Ryan flashing before me. "No, Emily," I said firmly. "He made his bed. Now he has to lie in it." Soon after, the BMW followed the Mercedes. Ryan's swagger disappeared with it. Instead of holding court at the diner, he started avoiding it altogether. Instead of polished shoes and pressed shirts, he showed up in worn jeans, his face pale and drawn. But it wasn't just the cars. The credit cards maxed out. Collectors called day and night. Friends who once cheered him on stopped answering his calls. Even Emily began to see through the cracks in his charm. One evening, as the sun set behind the empty farm fields I no longer owned, Ryan pulled into my driveway, not in a luxury car this time, but in Emily's old sedan, dented and wheezing. He stepped out slowly, shoulders hunched, eyes avoiding mine. "Dad," he muttered, his voice stripped of arrogance. "I need help." Those 3 words, from the same mouth that once mocked me, tasted sweeter than any victory I'd known. He had used me, humiliated me, tried to build his pride on my back. And now, here he was, broken, humbled, crawling back to the man he thought was beneath him, and I wasn't done yet. Ryan stood there in my driveway, shuffling his feet like a boy caught with his hand in the cookie jar. The swagger, the smirk, the polished shoes, all gone. He looked smaller somehow, as if life had squeezed the arrogance right out of him. "Dad," he began, his voice cracking, Things have gotten out of control. The cars are gone. The bills are piling up. Emily and we can't keep up. Please, I just need a little help. A loan, anything. I'll pay you back, I swear." I leaned on my cane, studying him. "A loan? Ryan, do you remember the last time you promised to pay me back? Or the time before that? Or the time you told me respect came with shiny cars while I sat in my rusty old truck?" His face flushed, but he didn't speak. "Do you remember standing in that diner, mocking me in front of half the town, telling me I'd never understand success?" My voice rose, sharp enough to cut. "Well, look at you now, son. Where's that success? Where's that pride?" Emily, who had been silent until now, stepped forward. Her eyes brimmed with tears. "Dad, I see it now. You were right. He used you. But please, don't let us drown. Help us." I looked at her, my heart heavy. She was my daughter, my blood. But sometimes love has to be tough. Sometimes the only way to save someone is to let them suffer the lesson. I turned back to Ryan. You wanted respect? You wanted pride? You thought money and cars would buy it for you. But respect isn't something you drive. It's something you earn. And you? You've earned nothing but shame. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. His eyes dropped to the dirt at his feet, his shoulders slumping like a beaten dog. I stepped closer, lowering my voice. You used me to fuel your pride. Now you'll choke on it. I don't owe you another dime, Ryan. Not today. Not ever. Silence stretched between us. Emily wiped her tears. Ryan clenched his fists, and I turned my back on them both. For the first time in his life, Ryan had no engine to rev, no keys to jingle, no mask to hide behind. Just the raw truth of a man brought down by his own greed. And in that silence, his pride finally broke. When they left my driveway that night, I sat on the porch long after their taillights disappeared down the road. The air was cool, the cicadas loud, and for the first time in years, I felt peace. Not because I'd humiliated Ryan, but because I'd finally taken back what he'd stolen from me, my pride. You see, revenge isn't always about destroying someone outright. Sometimes it's about stepping aside and letting their own choices bury them. Ryan thought luxury cars and shiny toys made him a man. He thought success was measured in chrome and leather, but all those cars did was drive him straight into ruin. Respect isn't bought with money. It isn't parked in a driveway or worn on a wrist. Respect is built with honesty, hard work, and the kind of character you can't fake. Ryan never understood that, and in the end, he lost everything trying to prove he was better than the man who gave him a chance. As for Emily, my heart aches for her. She chose him, defended him, and paid the price. But maybe, just maybe, she'll remember the lesson her father tried to teach her. Wealth without integrity is nothing but a curse. And so I carry on. My land may be gone, my home sold, but my name still stands. And in this town, that's worth more than all the cars in the world. Before you go, please subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts in the comments. Do you believe betrayal always deserves revenge, or is forgiveness sometimes the better road? I'd love to hear where you stand, because in the end, every story like mine isn't just about revenge. It's about the choices we make when faced with betrayal, and whether we rise or we fall,